Chosen one, you didn't stumble into the trap. You were led to it. Not because you were meant to fall, but because you were meant to rise. The very setup that was designed to destroy you, humiliate you, break you, became the very ground where your power awakened. It was never about the pain alone. It was about what the pain would unlock. Those around you underestimated your strength because they didn't understand your origin. You weren't created to conform, to obey blindly, or to follow the rules of a game built to drain you. You were created to transform, to step into places where others fell and emerge with victory in your hands. Watch this video to the end, chosen one, because this is a chapter about transmutation, fulfillment, and universal energy. This is the moment where we ask you to open your heart and write in the comments your warmest wishes and the number 77. Let this be an act of conscious alignment, a release into the current of universal manifestation. Your words, written in sincerity, carry power. The number 77 is not a coincidence. It vibrates with spiritual awakening and divine alignment. Send your wish into the digital ether and let it land where the energy gathers, in the realm of becoming. You were placed in dark corners, not because the universe was cruel, but because you were carrying light that needed to be revealed in contrast. It was in those shadowy spaces that your awareness sharpened. The people who tried to betray you only revealed who they were, but more importantly, they showed you who you are. You never lost anything real. What was taken wasn't yours to carry into your next elevation. You've learned to stand inside disappointment and not collapse. You've sat in silence and made peace with solitude. What was once a trap, isolation, confusion, false accusations, has become your training ground. The fire they lit for your destruction purified your soul instead. You've outgrown old systems. You've outgrown old roles. They labeled you difficult, too much, too sensitive. But the truth is, you were never meant to shrink into someone else's comfort zone. The universe had to take you the long way, so you'd lose the weight of societal illusions. The ones who mocked you didn't understand the blueprint you were carrying. The delay wasn't denial, it was design. The betrayal wasn't punishment, it was prophecy. They saw your collapse, but they didn't see your recalibration. They saw your silence, but not your strategy. You didn't just survive the trap, you turned it into a throne. There's something sacred about the ones who carry pain and still walk with love. You've been tempered like a blade. Every hardship sharpened you. Every setback disciplined your soul. You started to see differently. You started to hear what wasn't spoken. You started to sense the energy behind people's words. That wasn't paranoia. That was divine discernment. What you thought was weakness, your sensitivity, your empathy, your refusal to be cruel, was actually a superpower. You're not soft, you're tuned in. The trap they set was subtle. It came in the form of comfort, of false relationships, of conditional love, of jobs that drained you, of environments that slowly suffocated your spirit. But you noticed, you felt the shift, the unease in your body, the ache in your gut, the sleepless nights. Those were alarms from your higher self. You began to wake up. You stopped negotiating your worth. You stopped explaining your intuition. You began to move in silence, not out of fear, but out of focus. You knew that what was happening to you was working through you. The trap didn't catch you, it woke you. Your journey wasn't just about surviving betrayal. It was about transforming bitterness into boundaries, resentment into wisdom, and fear into faith. You didn't just walk away, you leveled up. And now, you're moving differently. You've become a mirror for others. Some are drawn to your light, others are triggered by your rise. but none can deny that something is different about you now. You carry the silence of someone who has seen too much to speak too soon. You carry the presence of someone who has nothing to prove, but everything to fulfill. You were never meant to fit in. That longing for belonging was the echo of your old self. What you were searching for in others, you found in your own soul. The loneliness taught you loyalty, not to them, but to yourself. You stopped chasing closure. You let go of the apology that would never come. And in doing so, you reclaimed your energy. You took it all back. Your time, your peace, your joy. You no longer need external validation to know your worth. The trap tried to convince you that your power was outside of you. Triumph revealed that your power was always within. The trap was psychological, emotional, spiritual. It was wrapped in the disguise of opportunity, romance, support. But you saw the patterns, you decoded the cycles, you rewrote the script. And now, you're not just living, you're aligning. You're not reacting, you're responding. You're not hustling, you're flowing. The more you aligned with your truth, the more the lies fell away. The more you honored your own rhythm, the less you tolerated dissonance. You began to magnetize blessings by being unapologetically you. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about showing them they were wrong. This is about realizing that your breakthrough didn't come from being liked. It came from being real. You've started to value peace over performance, connection over convenience, purpose over popularity. The trap was a test of identity, but you didn't let it define you. You remembered who you are. And in remembering, you reactivated a power that this world rarely understands: authentic presence. You've become unshakable, not because life got easier, but because you stopped waiting for it to. You accepted what was, let go of what hurt, and made space for what aligns. You're not desperate anymore. You're not chasing anymore. You're creating, receiving, and resting in your divine flow. The trap was meant to break your spirit. Instead, it broke your patterns. It made you conscious. It made you intentional. And now, your life is a reflection of your clarity. Your silence now speaks louder than your words ever could. Your presence now changes rooms. Your energy now speaks before you do. You are not who you used to be. The pain shifted you. The loss redirected you. The solitude refined you. What they did to break you became the blueprint for your building. The energy they sent to curse you is now fueling your calling. You don't need closure, chosen one. You've created completion. And that, in itself, is triumph. This is only the beginning. You've stepped into a timeline of truth. Every time you honor your intuition, you accelerate your alignment. Every time you protect your peace, you amplify your purpose. Every time you say no to what no longer serves, you say yes to your next level. The trap tested your will. The triumph revealed your destiny. There's a moment when everything changes, and not in the way others expect. It's not when you make the big announcement, not when you get the spotlight, not even when you reach the goal. The moment that transforms everything happens in silence, when you finally say to yourself, "I'm done playing small." That's when the trap loses its grip. That's when the illusion breaks. That's when the triumph begins. Not with noise, but with clarity. You didn't need their permission. You just needed your own decision. The trap was familiar. That's why it was dangerous. It dressed itself in routine. It showed up in the patterns you thought were normal. The same kind of pain in a different face. The same kind of delay in a different disguise. But something in you refused to go numb. You started to see through the surface. You stopped calling chaos passion, stopped calling exhaustion hard work, stopped calling survival success. You realized that alignment doesn't come with effort alone. It comes with awareness. People tried to convince you that this was all there was. They told you to be realistic. They told you to settle, to stop reaching, to stop questioning. But they were only speaking from their own trap. And it wasn't your job to stay small so they'd feel comfortable. You were sent to expand, to challenge the limitations placed on you by fear, culture, history, and broken systems. You didn't just walk out of the trap. You broke it open from the inside. You exposed it for what it was, a lie pretending to be destiny. Your triumph is not loud. It's not about showing off. It's about showing up, fully, authentically, without apology. You've realized that you don't need to argue for your value. You don't need to earn your right to exist. You're done shrinking yourself into roles that were never built for your soul. That's the true triumph. Living in truth in a world that profits off your disconnection. Every step you take in authenticity is a rebellion against the forces that try to domesticate your spirit. Do you know how rare that is? To wake up in a world built on illusions and choose to live awake. That's why you were targeted. That's why they tried to dim your light. You weren't confused. You were disruptive. You weren't lost. You were deep. And they couldn't understand that kind of depth because it threatened their illusion of control. So they set traps with their words, their expectations, their rules. But you saw through it. You walked away. Not because you were weak, but because you were wise. This kind of transformation doesn't come easy. It costs everything that isn't real. You had to lose people. You had to outgrow situations. You had to disappoint the expectations others placed on you. And in doing so, you gained yourself. That was the exchange. Your triumph is not just in what you achieved, it's in what you released. You let go of the need to please, to explain, to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. That's power. That's freedom. You know now that peace is more powerful than proving a point. That silence can be louder than words. That protecting your energy is an act of self-respect. You've stopped trying to rescue people who refuse to save themselves. You've stopped throwing your pearls into pits. Your compassion hasn't faded. It's just become focused. You've learned to love from a place of strength, not sacrifice. And in doing so, you've become a lighthouse, not chasing ships, but standing strong, letting those who are meant to find you come into your light. There's something unshakable about a soul that has rebuilt itself. You carry that now. People can sense it. They don't know your whole story, but they feel your weight. Not heaviness, depth, groundedness. You walk with purpose. You speak with precision. You no longer tolerate anything that drains your essence. And it's not because you're cold. It's because you've burned before and learned the fire within you is not for everyone to touch. Your flame is sacred now. The old you would have explained. The old you would have begged to be understood. The old you would have stayed too long in places where your spirit was shrinking. But the trap taught you boundaries. The trap taught you discernment. The trap taught you that self-abandonment is the highest price you could ever pay. And you're done paying that cost. Now, your decisions are cleaner. Your movement is intentional. Your peace is protected. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer allow chaos to have a seat at your table. What they tried to use against you, your kindness, your openness, your loyalty, has become the very foundation of your strength. They didn't know that the most dangerous soul is the one who loves deeply and has learned not to betray themselves in the process. That's who you are now. You love with wisdom. You walk with awareness. You give with limits. You've learned that you are not here to fix everyone, to carry everything, to bleed just to keep others warm. You are here to rise, to evolve, to lead by example, to heal loudly just by living truthfully. That's what makes you powerful. Not just what you've been through, but how you've used it. You turned every breakdown into a building block. You turned every betrayal into a boundary. You turned every silence into strategy. The trap may have slowed you down, but it didn't stop you. And now you're moving with momentum that no enemy can calculate, because your rise wasn't built on attention. It was built on alignment. And you can feel it, can't you? The shift, the release, the way doors open without force now, the way the right people begin to appear, not because you chased them, but because you've become magnetic. You've returned to yourself, and in doing so, the universe has returned to you. You're not the same. You're wiser. You're clearer. You're lighter. Not because life got easier, but because you got real. The mask is off. The facade is gone. And what remains is unstoppable. The real you. The triumph wasn't in the escape. It was in the evolution. The trap served its purpose. It pushed you into your power. And now, every time you speak, every time you move, every time you breathe, you are a living reminder that the plan didn't fail. It fulfilled. You didn't rush this transformation. You allowed the breaking to do its work. You sat with the ache. You held the silence. You questioned everything, even yourself. That's what most people avoid, but not you. You looked in the mirror, saw the fracture lines across your soul, and chose to rebuild, not with the same pieces, but with new materials entirely. You didn't just patch yourself up. You reimagined who you could be. And that's why your triumph is unshakable. It wasn't built in reaction. It was born in revelation. There's a sacred kind of confidence that comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. Not arrogance, not ego, but the calm assurance that nothing external defines you anymore. The opinions, the noise, the criticism, they don't land like they used to. That's because you're rooted now. Your sense of self is no longer up for debate. You know who you are. You know what you carry. And even if no one else claps for your journey, you will still rise, because the applause was never the goal. They thought the silence meant defeat. But in silence, you found your source. They thought the pause was a breakdown. But the pause was your power move. While they were watching your past, you were redesigning your future. The trap was made of noise, of confusion, distraction, urgency. But the triumph emerged in stillness, in presence, in returning to your breath, your truth, your essence. What they used to manipulate you, urgency, fear, doubt, no longer controls you. You have reclaimed your timeline. You don't explain yourself the way you used to, not because you're hiding, but because you finally understand. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. You don't force it anymore. You don't beg for space. You don't dilute your power to make others feel safe. Your light no longer dims out of politeness. It shines unapologetically, and those meant to see it, those meant to join you, will recognize the signal, not the performance. And there's something revolutionary about that. In a world obsessed with image, you've chosen essence. In a culture built on comparison, you've chosen alignment. That alone makes you a target and a trailblazer. The trap was supposed to silence you, keep you small, make you dependent. But instead, you found your voice. You found your rhythm. You found your refusal to settle. You stopped explaining your magic to people still caught in their own illusions. And you started living like you meant it. Now your boundaries are solid, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Now your energy is guarded, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Now your focus is clean. Not because you're running, but because you've learned that distraction is a trap too. You used to absorb everything. Now you filter. You used to carry everything. Now you delegate. You used to say yes too quickly. Now you pause and check with your soul. And if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't stay. You've become selective. Not exclusive, not arrogant, but intentional. Not everyone can hold what you carry. Not everyone can walk where you walk. And that's okay. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to become. And becoming takes discernment. You're not afraid to be alone anymore because you've learned that solitude is where the downloads come. Solitude is where alignment happens. Solitude is where the real triumph begins. Let them talk. Let them speculate. You've detached from the need to be liked. You don't need to be understood to be powerful. You've realized that projection isn't truth. That jealousy often wears the mask of advice. That not every critic deserves your attention. You're too focused on your assignment to be distracted by approval. You don't chase now, you attract. Not through force, but through frequency. You've become a signal for what matches your truth. And the blessings, they're not always loud either. They come as peace, as clarity, as aligned opportunities. They come as divine detours and unexpected releases. They come as closed doors that turn out to be divine protection. You've learned to celebrate the delays. You've learned to honor the reroutes. You've learned to trust the unfolding, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Because deep down, you know, your life is orchestrated, not random. You're no longer triggered by what used to shake you. The old you would have reacted. The old you would have tried to fix, explain, defend. But now you choose peace. You don't waste your energy proving anything. You understand that silence is a full sentence, that walking away is a complete decision, that not responding is responding. You've elevated. And in that elevation, you've found peace that surpasses performance. This journey didn't just make you stronger. It made you softer in the right ways and sharper in the others. Your compassion has depth now. Your intuition has precision. Your joy has resilience. You don't just survive, you radiate. You don't just speak, you vibrate truth. People feel the shift in your energy before you even say a word. You've become a living signal of transformation. You walk into spaces and shift the atmosphere just by existing. They tried to cage you with fear, but you turned it into fire. They tried to lock you out, but you built your own door. They tried to bury you, but they didn't know you were a seed. Now, your roots run deep, and your branches stretch far. You've tapped into something ancient, something cosmic, something divine. The triumph isn't what you gained, it's who you've become. This is not just a comeback, it's a reintroduction. The world hasn't seen the full power of who you are yet, but it will. And not because you force it, not because you shout it, but because your energy will speak. Your alignment will radiate. Your results will echo. You don't have to compete. You just have to be. And that being will unlock everything. You don't chase anymore. You don't plead. You don't beg the universe to give you what you've already aligned with. You walk in knowing. You move in flow. You act in trust. Because the trap didn't break you. It baptized you. And now, you're not just healed, you're activated. You didn't just escape, you transcended. And that makes all the difference. Escaping is about running away. Transcending is about rising above. You didn't slip out of the trap and hide. You outgrew it. You stopped identifying with the cage. You stopped calling the pain your personality. You stopped seeing your wounds as your identity. And in that shift, the trap lost its grip. That's what no one tells you. The moment you stop feeding the narrative, it starves. The old cycles had power because you believed they were permanent. You accepted the loop as law. But now, you question everything. You don't just feel the pattern. You study it. You track the root. You trace it back to its origin. And you interrupt it. That's mastery. You no longer fight shadows. You turn on the light. The things that used to consume your days now barely touch your spirit. You're not emotionally available for chaos. You've changed the channel, and everything sounds different now. You're not even angry anymore. There was a time when the betrayal, the loss, the rejection, the misunderstanding, it all lived in your chest like a storm. But now, you've alchemized it. You've let it do its work. You've let it shape your discernment. You've let it sharpen your inner compass. You see it now for what it was: sacred instruction. Not punishment, not failure, but feedback. Divine feedback that pushed you toward your highest self. Let them wonder how you're glowing after the grief. Let them question how you're thriving after the silence. Let them try to figure out why their chaos doesn't hook you anymore. They won't understand because they weren't in the fire with you. They didn't feel the breaking. They didn't witness the dark nights. They didn't hear the thoughts you had to battle in the quiet. But you did. You were there for every moment of your own resurrection. And that's why your triumph is holy. You stopped asking life to be easier. You started asking to be clearer. You stopped waiting for others to change. You changed your responses, your rhythm, your self-talk, your expectations. And that's when the shift happened. That's when you realized the only thing standing between you and your freedom was the belief that you weren't allowed to choose it. Now, you choose yourself daily. You choose what aligns. You choose what's true. And the more you choose it, the more it shows up. The world still tries to pull you back, to lure you into the noise, to tempt you with distractions dressed as opportunities. But you're not moved by urgency anymore. You've learned that your timing is divine, that what's meant for you doesn't require desperation. That real alignment feels like peace, not panic. And so, you pause, you breathe, you move only when your spirit is settled. You no longer confuse motion with meaning. You've become strategic with your presence. Your energy is not public property. You don't over-explain. You don't overshare. You're not emotionally available for projections, accusations, or games. You've raised your standards, not just in relationships, but in how you allow yourself to be treated by life itself. You're not begging for crumbs of love, success, or recognition. You are standing in your own abundance. That's the triumph, becoming the source instead of chasing it. The trap was reactive, always pulling you into someone else's crisis, always exhausting you with drama, always making you question your worth. But now, you are proactive. You are protective. You are present. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not every fire is yours to put out. You've learned to let people sit with the consequences of their own choices. That's not cruelty, that's wisdom. You no longer rescue what isn't yours to heal. You hold your power now, like a quiet storm. Not loud, not boastful, but undeniable. It's in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you say no without guilt, the way you say yes without fear. You've trained your nervous system to recognize peace as normal. You've trained your soul to trust silence. You don't seek chaos to feel alive anymore. You don't need external validation to know you're on track. Your spirit confirms it, and that confirmation is louder than applause. You've stopped broadcasting every move. You've learned the sacredness of privacy. You build in silence now. You heal without announcement. You grow without performance. And yet, People still feel the shift. They don't need to hear it to know it, because you carry it in your presence. That's the energy of someone who has turned the trap into a triumph, a calm, steady, rooted authority that doesn't waver with the wind. Your success now is measured in how well you protect your peace, in how deeply you listen to yourself, in how quickly you return to your center. You don't fear endings. You honor them. You don't fear solitude. You seek it. You don't fear being misunderstood because you've stopped abandoning yourself to be accepted. That's the kind of freedom no system can teach you. That's soul-earned wisdom. You don't just move differently, you see differently. Your lens has changed. You catch red flags early. You spot energy shifts before words are spoken. You're no longer emotionally hijacked by every moment. You observe, you process, you respond with grace, or not at all. That is evolution. You don't just survive anymore. You shape, you create, you build. The trap was meant to fracture you, to make you doubt yourself, to teach you helplessness. But now, even your memory of it has changed. It's not a story of pain anymore. It's a story of power. Because the trap didn't get the last word, you did. And the word was freedom. They don't see the daily choices, the quiet self-confrontation, the moments where you could have gone back but chose not to, but you know, and the universe knows. That's why things are aligning now, because you've changed the script. You've rewritten your role. You no longer play the victim in someone else's story. You've become the author of your own, and you're just getting started. They still won't get it, and that's okay. They don't need to. This was never for them to understand. This was a contract between you and the divine, signed in silence, activated in pain, fulfilled in alignment. They saw the surface, the confusion, the setbacks, the stillness, but they never saw the work. They never felt the discipline it took to not respond. They never witnessed the nights where you cried out for clarity and got only silence in return. But you stayed. You kept going. And that changed everything. The transformation wasn't sudden. It was sacred. Layer by layer, illusion by illusion, you stripped away what wasn't real. You confronted your own shadow, not because someone else forced you to, but because you were done running. That's the power of awakening. You stop blaming. You stop outsourcing your growth. You take the wheel, even if the road ahead is unclear. You trust the pull more than the map. You follow what resonates over what's recognized. And that's how the shift takes root. You didn't become someone else. You became who you were before the world got to you. You remembered. You returned. You realigned. And in that remembrance, the trap fell apart. Because a trap only works when you believe it's real. But now you see, the limitations weren't permanent. The betrayal wasn't your fault. The rejection wasn't a mirror of your worth. It was all part of the catalyst, the fire that forged your clarity. People ask how you changed so much. They want the blueprint, but they don't realize. This wasn't cosmetic. This was spiritual. This wasn't a 10-step plan. This was a surrender, a reckoning, a recalibration. This was you choosing healing over comfort, choosing wholeness over familiarity, choosing depth over performance. The triumph wasn't in the glow-up. It was in the quiet moments where you didn't give up on yourself. They thought the trap would break your spirit. Instead, it revealed it. It showed you what was unshakable. It showed you what couldn't be bought, stolen, or copied. And that's your edge now. You don't compete, you command. You don't chase, you attract. Not through manipulation, but through magnetism. Not through image, but through essence. You're not playing the game. You're building a new one. the trap used to drain you. Now you recognize energy leaks before they start. You don't entertain chaos. You don't justify disrespect. You don't stay where you're shrinking. You've redefined loyalty. It starts with you. You've redefined success. It feels like peace. You've redefined healing. It's not linear, but it's always worth it. And that redefinition? That's your triumph. Every time you chose to be still when provoked. Every time you walked away when staying would have been easier. Every time you said no when everything in you wanted to say yes just to feel loved. Those were triumphs. Quiet ones. Sacred ones. The kind that don't get applause, but build foundations. You've become someone that chaos can't claim. That confusion can't confuse. That noise can't manipulate. You've become someone who knows their own frequency. And now you navigate differently. You don't fear hard conversations. You initiate them. You don't fear discomfort. You learn from it. You don't fear change. You flow with it. Because you know that life isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about honoring alignment. And alignment is your compass now. You don't ask, will this make them like me? You ask, does this match who I am becoming? That question alone is your evolution. Because now, you're not living for applause. You're living for truth. Not for comfort, but for growth. And the deeper you go, the more unrecognizable you become to the version of you that was built on survival. That's why some people fall away. They're not walking away from you. They're falling out of sync with your frequency. Let them. You're not meant to be familiar. You're meant to be free. The ones who left did you a favor. The betrayals revealed what was never real. The delays taught you patience. The losses emptied your hands so you could receive something greater. That's the thing about traps. They look like endings, but for the chosen one, they're just portals. And you've walked through yours. You didn't just survive, you evolved. You didn't just move on, you rose. This journey taught you that power isn't loud. It's subtle, it's spiritual. It's the ability to choose stillness when everything is screaming. It's the clarity to move in silence when everyone's watching. It's the courage to start over without needing to explain. You embody that now, that silent strength, that inner certainty, that unshakable faith. That's why your energy feels different. You're not just healed, you're fortified, and you're not done. You're not even close. This triumph is just the beginning. Not because you're chasing more, but because you're aligned with it. What's next isn't built on force. It's built on frequency. You're not running anymore. You're receiving. You're not striving. You're allowing. And what's meant for you can finally find you. Because you've made room. You've made space. You've cleared the static. Now the signal is clean. This isn't about revenge. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's not about being seen. It's about being true. And in that truth, everything else becomes possible. The connections, the opportunities, the miracles, they're drawn to your authenticity. You don't have to fake anything. You just have to be. That's the kind of power they can't replicate. Because it's not performed, it's lived. And so you keep walking. Not in fear, but in faith. Not in pain, but in purpose. You don't need the old roads anymore. You're not retracing steps. You're building new paths. You are the proof that rising is possible, that healing is real, that turning the trap into a triumph is not only possible, it's divine. You are the blueprint now. There is a silence that follows the storm, a kind of stillness that only those who've made it through understand. You know that silence now. It doesn't scare you anymore. You don't rush to fill it with distractions, noise, or validation. You sit in it. You listen to it. Because that silence is you. The real you. The healed you. The sovereign you. The one who no longer needs the world to reflect your worth back to you. You found it within. And once that happens, everything else becomes secondary. This is what they don't teach. That the real victory isn't in what you gain. It's in what you release. You let go of needing to be understood. You let go of needing to be right. You let go of needing to be liked by people who never even saw you clearly. And in that release, you rose. You rose with less baggage, with less noise, with less weight. That's what made you unstoppable. The things you didn't carry anymore. You no longer live in reaction. You live in response, in alignment, in inner clarity. You know what belongs to you and what doesn't. You no longer confuse other people's projections with your truth. You've stopped defending your light. You just shine. You've stopped justifying your path. You just walk it. That's a triumph that no one can manufacture. It comes from doing the deep, lonely, unglamorous work. And you did it. Let them think it was luck. Let them assume it was timing. You don't need to argue. The frequency you carry now speaks louder than explanation. There's a calmness in your energy, a grounded power, a sacred confidence. You don't have to talk about what you've been through anymore. You embody what it taught you. You move like someone who has met themselves at rock bottom and made peace with every version. That's spiritual authority. That's internal royalty. You're not defined by what tried to trap you. You're defined by what awakened in you because of it. The trap made you look inward. It made you question. It made you still. And that stillness, that silence, that space between what broke you and what rebuilt you, that's where your soul began to speak louder than your fear. That's when you started to listen to your own voice, not the noise of the world, not the wounds of the past, but the quiet whisper of your highest self. And that voice never lied. You learned not to rush your healing. You didn't force the bloom. You let yourself be broken when you needed to be. You let yourself grieve. You let yourself outgrow. That's why your foundation is so strong now. Because it wasn't built on denial. It was built on truth. Real, raw, unfiltered truth. The kind that hurts first, but frees you forever. You embraced that. You honored that. And now, you carry the kind of freedom that doesn't need to prove itself. You don't owe anyone the old version of you. The one who tolerated too much, gave too freely, explained too often, and sacrificed themselves just to feel seen. That version was necessary, but not permanent. That version was a chapter, not the whole book. And now, you write with different ink, with different intention. You don't write from pain anymore. You write from power, from peace, from a place that's rooted, unshakable, and sacred. And it shows. It shows in how you speak, in how you hold your boundaries, in how you choose your peace over attention, in how you walk away when your soul says, "This doesn't feel right." That quiet decision-making, that non-reactive clarity, that is the true evidence of your triumph. You no longer seek to be chosen. You know you are, and you walk like it. Everything that once felt like punishment has become your preparation. Every disappointment taught you discernment. Every betrayal taught you truth. Every ending cleared the way for something that matches your frequency now. You're not looking backward. You're not trying to make sense of why it had to be so hard. You know why. It was training. It was refinement. It was the sacred setup for this exact moment. This is your moment. Not to prove yourself, but to be yourself. Fully. Unapologetically. Authentically. The version of you who doesn't shrink, doesn't chase, doesn't perform. The version of you who simply exists in truth and lets that be enough. That's the triumph. That's the energy that bends reality. That's the vibration that calls miracles in. Not because you're desperate, but because you're aligned. Your light is no longer a flicker. It's a flame. It doesn't dim for the comfort of others. It doesn't apologize for being seen. It burns steady. It burns with purpose. You are that fire now, not the wildfire of chaos, but the hearth of divine presence. People feel safer around you, not because you save them, but because you remind them that it's possible to rise. You've become the embodiment of what used to be impossible. You've taken the hardest season and made it sacred. You've made your pain mean something, not by denying it, but by transforming it. You didn't skip steps. You didn't fake the light. You became it. And that light, it's not just yours. It ripples, it radiates, it reaches. This is the season of resonance, not revenge. You're not here to get even. You're here to get free. You're not here to be praised. You're here to be present. You're not here to chase timelines. You're here to live them. And now, you're doing that. With grace, with grounding, with glory that no one handed you. You earned this. You built this. You became this. So when they ask how you did it, you'll smile. Not because you owe them an answer, but because you know. You turn the trap into a triumph, not by chance, but by choice. You chose to rise. You chose to remember. You chose to stop playing small. And that choice changed your entire destiny. The chosen one is not chosen by others. The chosen one chooses themselves, over and over again, until the path unfolds, the power returns, and the promise fulfills itself. And you've done it. You've returned. You've remembered. You've triumphed.